Hey guys, I had a viewer request that I review this Vulcan welding cart. I'll jump right into this review, but let me just preface by saying this may turn out to be a bit of a longer video. And the reason for that is because a welding cart is a dual purpose thing. It's both tool storage and it's the tool. Once you put your welder on this thing, it becomes part of the welder, and you would move it to where the welding is or the welding to where it is. As opposed to it being more like a mechanic's toolbox where you go get the tools out of it. So because of its dual functionality, we may spend a bit of time on this. First off, let me talk about what this cart is not and who it is not for. If you're in a production shop where you're going to have more than one welder doing more than one thing at once, or one guy cutting and fabbing and another guy welding, you're going to want to separate out your machines. You're going to want to have one cart for each machine for each purpose. That way you can have one guy over here doing one thing and one guy over here doing something else. So it's not for the production shop with multiple welders and fabricators working together. It's also not a transformer machine cart. In other words, you're not going to want to get your shop crane and pick up your Synchrowave 250 and put it down on top of this thing. I think it would hold the weight, but I don't think it would last. If you need a cart for a large transformer-based machine, you need to build a cart for that machine. And that brings me into the other person this cart is not for. This cart is one size fits most. The perfect welding cart for you is one you've built that meets the needs that you have specifically. It's also a great project. In other words, it gives you an opportunity to practice your fixturing, to practice cuts, to practice getting things level, square, and plumb. It gives you an opportunity to fix your mistakes as you make them. So it's not for production shops. It's not for big transformer machines. And it's not one size fits every single person. Who is this cart for? This cart is for a one-man shop or a one welder shop that uses inverter machines. And if that's you, then you're interested in this thing. So I've had this cart 8 months now. I've rolled it outside of the shop. I've rolled it around the shop. I've rolled it over 3/8 metal. I've rolled it over its own cord. The rolling mechanism is as good as you would want for a $320 cart. As far as its weight holding capacity, I've got two number 4 thoroughbred cylinders on the back, and it can hold those and 2 more and do just fine. When you get this cart, there is some assembly required, and in assembling this cart, one of the things you have to do is you have to put those wheels on, and you have to attach them to this bottle carrying assembly, and then you have to attach it to the body of the cart. That attachment down here is done with 3 screws on this side and 3 screws on the back side of the cart. When I put this together, I was worried that that was inadequate, like that was not, the metal gauge wasn't heavy enough, the screws weren't big enough, the connection wasn't strong enough. I was just afraid that would be a spot where the cart would fail. And I can tell you, of all the things that worry me about this cart, well, actually, nothing worries me about this cart except for that. And still to this day, I'm not just super sure that I'm not still worried about that. That said, I put the thing together. I stood on that. I weighed 250 pounds. I stood on it, and I basically scooted this thing around like a scooter and rode it all over my shop, trying to break it, trying to see if there would be a failure. And it held beautifully. It didn't flex, bend, twist, anything. It worked out fine. If you are worried about that connection, there's plenty of ways you can remedy that with some custom work. Okay, this cart is not intended as a park against the wall type cart. This is more of a get to all sides of the cart. So because of that, I apologize about the camera shakiness you're about to see, but we're going to come off the tripod. Okay, first off, if you're going to use a heavy cord with some length for your 220 welders, these 2 hooks are the only ones that are of a strength that is sufficient to hold that cord. And I can tell you, that's a 50-foot, 60 amp cord, and those haven't bent or tried to break or given me any trouble at all. Now, if you've got 300 foot of welding lead, that's not going to hold 300 foot of welding lead. I mean, this is about as crazy as I get with it right there. The TIG rod holder, it's of course designed for these Harbor Freight TIG rods. If you have those nice sealed TIG tubes, you're going to have to fabricate something different than this bracket here to put those in. These wire holders here, for me and the way I have the cart set up, they're kind of extra and honestly pretty useless. Over here at the bottle rack, like I say, the bottle rack is sturdy. It does hold up. The chain system does hold the bottles, even rolling this thing outside, rolling it around. Now we're on to what I have set up as the front of the cart. Now, a lot of people turn their welders around the other way. So in other words, to where the back of the welders face this side of the cart and the front of the welders are over here. And then they can hang their MIG wire, their MIG gun here, and they can hang their TIG or stick welding stuff here. And they just feel like that's cleaner because there's not all these hoses and cables hanging down in front of the drawers on the other side. My problem with doing it that way is my setup. If my door to put my wire and my wire feeder were on this side of my MIG welder, my cart would be set up the way I just described. But because my Lincoln welder opens on this side, if I turn everything around the other way, that door would be against the bottles. Or there would be, I'd have to have all the welders over on this side of the cart, and there'd be a space in between the bottles and the machines, and that space wouldn't be very useful. So because of the design of my welder, this is the right way for the setup. Eventually, I hope to get an Everlast MIG welder. When I do, it opens on the other side. I'll turn all this stuff around, and this cart will be set up completely different. But for now, this is what we've got. If you are a person whose setup would need to be this way, where that door, because of where it is, needs to be on this side of the machine, it's not terrible. And let me show you. So right now you're looking down at the front of the cart. This welder is an Everlast Power Pro 256 SI. This is a big inverter machine. So big, in fact, that its front feet don't sit on the cart. So as far as overhang goes, this is as bad as it can get. Also, it's a MIG TIG stick plasma. So it's got lots of stuff to come out of the front of it, as you see here. It's currently set up for TIG welding. So how bad is it as far as being in the way of the drawers? Well, the top drawer is probably your busiest drawer. This is the drawer where you're going to have all your MIG and TIG gadgetry. And I've got some Pyrex cups, some stubby gas lenses, some stubby cups, some full-size cups, a TIG pea shooter, some plasma cutting consumables, an extra set of brushes for a Harbor Freight angle grinder. I've got a review of that. I'll try to link it. Wheel holders for angle grinders. You can never have too many of those. Pens and pencils. So basic consumables drawer with some measuring ability. The problem with this drawer is that this separator, this thing is not adjustable. It is firmly welded at all these points. Now this would be easy to take out and take apart, cut what I needed to cut, and move things and re-weld the tabs. This would be a simple project to fix. But although it's not perfect, for my needs, it's good enough. So here's where we get into the potential problem with having your welders where the leads come off of this side of the machine, and that's closing this top drawer. So while it does pose a bit of a chore, basically, a simple lift and you can get everything out of the way. Pretty easy. Next drawer is just a large drawer, and I keep welding wire, tungsten, that sort of thing in here. This is an adapter to run a large spool in my little Pro MIG 180 Lincoln. Wire, electrodes, basically all welding consumables are cheaper when you buy them in bulk. So this allows you the opportunity to buy wire in bulk and use it in a small machine. This next drawer is safety stuff. And one product I haven't opened yet, I wanted to open it for you guys here and kind of show it to you. This makes this cart much more usable. Makes any welding cart that has bottles on it much more usable, really. This is called a hell hook. And it's just a plastic bottle top hook. And here it is on top of my 75-25 mix. And I've got a 25-foot water-cooled TIG torch hanging on it. I've got 25-foot plasma torch hanging on it. I've got my welding helmet hanging on it. I've got my welding shirt hanging on it. A cap back there for when it's cold. And then I think everybody at some point has built one of these, kind of a do-it-yourself bottle hook. And I've got my stinger for stick welding hanging on it. These hell hooks aren't perfect. You know, the hooks are stationary. There are other options out there, but they work, and they really do hold a lot of weight. This TIG torch is not light, and it's holding it fine. As far as perspective goes, I'll go ahead and open up the other one, and we'll do a little weight test for you. So it basically just slips on and sits on the threads like that. Now again, it's plastic and it doesn't seem like it would do much for you, but let me show you the weight it can hold. These are AR 500 targets, and they're probably, this is probably 20 pounds worth of steel here. And you'll notice I'm hanging on the hook that is by the opening that slides over the bottle, so it has the most opportunity to break. And these clamps aren't particularly heavy. But they're probably 3 or 4 pounds. So you're probably looking at 30 pounds on that hook. I can't imagine what you would be putting on that hook that would weigh 30 pounds that you would realistically expect that hook to hold. Again, not the place to hang 300 foot of #1 lead, but still, it's a good idea. This bottom is a roll-up cab, and I keep angle grinders down here. So now we're at this side cabinet. I kind of don't use this cabinet very much. Basically, all I use it for is large, awkward size things. I used to keep my welding hood in here, but it's just easier to have it hanging on the bottles. One thing I want to show you while we're down here, I expressed concern over this joint here. This joint is done in the same fashion as the wheels in here are. So I want to show you that so you can take a closer look. So you've got a mild steel plate tacked to the sheet metal, and it is threaded, and then you've got grade 5 screws that hold the wheels in place. That is the exact same method used to attach the bottle holder. If, or perhaps when, this bottle holder system fails, the way I will improve it is I will get a piece of 3/8 inch mild steel, and I will drill and tap it in the same 3 locations as the current holes for larger bolts, and I will use grade 8 bolts to hold this piece onto this. Again, I don't think the metal will fail. In other words, I don't think this piece will fail, and I don't think this piece will fail. I think that the screws into the mild steel is what will fail. And I will basically replicate their system when I fix it, or if I need to fix it, but the way I'll replicate it is just beefier. So that's something to consider about the cart as far as a negative. Other than that, there's not really a negative. So at this point, if you're considering getting one of these carts, what's some modifications you might consider to make it even better? Well, one modification might be that you build a rack that sits inside this notch here. So here to here in this space, the whole side, the whole top surface area and raises the welders up about 8 inches to a foot. And what that would do is it would create a cubby for you to put all your wires and leads in. Again, you might be a one MIG welder type of guy, but for me, I've got, plasma cutter, TIG welder, TIG pedal. I got a lot of stuff to put on this thing. And when I roll it all up, it's all kind of stacked one on top of the other. So that's one thing you might do to modify it. An alternative way to accomplish that would be to build some sort of shelf that affixed itself to that rib. Maybe take a piece of Delrin or Kydex and fold it over this piece here. Build you some sort of clamping mechanism, maybe a U-shaped piece of steel that's threaded where you can screw a screw in just under this lip against that Delrin so you don't tear up your cart. You do the same thing on the other side, and off of the top of that clamping mechanism, you have a shelf that rides right up here. And then on that shelf, you can put all your stuff, all your leads and squares and that sort of thing. So basically that one extra full-length shelf, however you get there, that would be something I would add, whether it be atop the welders or below the welders. Personally, I like the idea of it being below the welders, and the reason I do is because most of the inverter machines, the leads, come out of the bottom of the machines. So instead of having them drape up over the front of the machines and then go in or onto their shelf, they would tuck in nicely right underneath. Bottom line, would I recommend the cart? Yes, I would recommend the cart. Do I think the cart is solid? Yeah, I feel like it's pretty solid. Do I feel like it's got a weak link? Yeah, I do, right there. Is there an easy fix for that weak link for a guy who has need of a multi-welder cart? Yeah, that wouldn't be a hard fix at all. So bottom line, I recommend the cart. I like the cart. Obviously, I didn't plan on doing this review when I got it new. What I can tell you as far as packaging goes is that all of the Harbor Freight boxes I've bought, and I've bought 4 so far, they've all been immaculately packaged, very, very well protected, and I've not had a single scratch on any box at all whatsoever. And the finish has held up as well as any. So bottom line, I like the cart. I recommend the cart for $320. It's hard to beat. Please like and please subscribe, guys. It helps the channel out. Thank you.